Kurt, there's so many directions we want to go here. I mean, there are some out there who are comparing this to what happened with tobacco company executives on the stand, when we were kids, and the way that changed the public health view of cigarettes, and the way that has looked back on historically. What's at stake here?
Yeah, I mean, this is, to your point, sort of in the same general vein as those cigarette, tobacco industry trials, opioid industry trials. Like, this is a question of whether these social networks specifically are built, with the intention of addicting users, particularly addicting young people, teenagers, to their products. And so this is a real, signature moment, I would say, for this industry to kind of be challenged with these allegations, and in Mark Zuckerberg's case, to defend himself and his company against these accusations. And so it's been highly watched, highly anticipated. And this is just really the first of more than 1,000 potential trials that we could see. There's thousands of lawsuits in this same vein. And so we're paying particularly close attention to this one, because the outcome of this could sort of signal what we might see from a lot of these other lawsuits that have yet to be tried.
How do you differentiate, or how does a judge, or how do lawyers differentiate on whether something is meant to be addictive to kids, or just it's addictive in nature, so it doesn't matter if the person who's using it is 12 years old or 25 years old?
Yeah, I mean, this is why it's such a challenging question. I don't know is the short answer, the answer to this, but I can tell you that what plaintiffs' lawyers were doing this morning with Mark Zuckerberg on the stand was they were trying to show two things. The first was they were challenging him over Meta's enforcement of its age restrictions, basically saying, are you actually enforcing this idea that those under 13 should not be on the platform? And if so, are you doing everything possible to actually do that? And I feel like that's really been maybe the main argument that's been happening, is that they haven't really enforced their own policies on that. Mark Zuckerberg has admitted, hey, this is a difficult thing for us to do. And you may recall, like, this actually ties into a broader tech industry discussion we've had over the last couple of years, where Meta has said, hey, this should be the job of the app stores. This should be an Apple and Google thing. And Apple and Google are saying, no, this is your responsibility, Meta. You have to determine how old the users are on your platform. And so this sort of plays into a discussion we've really heard more broadly across the industry for the last couple of years.
What's so fascinating, Kurt, it's happening on a day when we've talked about CBS and what's happened on Stephen Colbert's show in terms of one specific Texas politician who is running for now a federal Senate seat. But I mean, just the rules and oversight. And it's just fascinating that when, traditional airwaves came out, there was oversight, right? There was rules about what could be on air. And now most of us are getting information from social media, right? It's not your linear broadcast and so on. So you do wonder, like, when does the oversight come from all of this? And as you write in your story, I mean, this is one case. You have 3,000 cases brought by children, adolescents, and young adults through their parents. You've got school districts. You've got, so much going on. It's not, so how important is this first case? Because it sounds like there's a lot more legal overhang from Meta and others.
I think it's really important. I mean, we had some time with Meta's lawyers a few weeks ago, their legal team, and what they told us was, each case is different, each trial is different, each jury is different. Mm-hmm. So getting a verdict in their favor one way or the other on this first case, isn't a huge deal. But I think for those watching on the outside, this is going to signal, do these cases have merit? Do these cases have legs? Certainly it's going to be hard for lawyers in the other cases not to look here and say, okay, what worked and what didn't work in terms of arguments and lines of questioning. So I think it's very important. It could also be the kind of thing, if Meta loses a case early on, do they choose to start to settle some of these cases down the line to avoid having to go through the actual jury process every time? And so I think this is important. It certainly will signal or set sort of the expectation for things to come, even though it is true, I think, that each case will have its own nuances and details to flush out. this will kind of serve as a bellwether.
Listen, this is not a U.S. issue, as you well know, Kurt. It's a global issue. And I'm looking at a story that was on the Bloomberg yesterday. India discussing age-based social media curbs, according to one of its ministers. You've got countries, right, Tim, around the world that are taking steps to crack down on use. Australia, the first country to implement a legal ban, which included Meta's Instagram and Facebook, Snap, Elon Musk's X, TikTok, and Google's YouTube. Ireland, it is going across Europe. So we are seeing so many different things go on.
Yeah. Kurt, what do public health officials, not just in the US, but in public health observers, say about these platforms in general and kids?
Well, I mean, there's been research for years that these platforms can be very divisive. It's easy for misinformation, for example, to run rampant on these platforms. We've all certainly witnessed that. I think it was in the US where they wanted to apply sort of similar warnings that you would get on cigarettes, right? Like smoking labels, essentially, but for social media. And so there's been a lot of talk about this. I think what's interesting about these bans or these restrictions for teens is that they are, everyone's watching Australia. You mentioned India. There's several other countries in Europe that are considering similar restrictions. But there's also states in the US that are trying to get this done as well, to try and sort of limit social media use for teens. And it'll be interesting to see if there's a snowball effect at some point, right? Because right now it's limited. It's a lot of chatter. But a year from now, 2 years from now, are we going to look up and say, hey, this is now the norm, right? That those under 16 just can't use social media. And I think that's certainly possible.
I mean, it's wild. I mean, Ireland, right? Home to kind of the EU tech hub. It's considering plans to introduce age restrictions on social media platforms as part of a broader AI strategy. And they've talked about this. Do you feel like, Kurt, you follow this world, that we are getting to a moment of reckoning when it comes to social media? There's a great story by Max Chafkin about
dumb phones,
rather than
every parent in the newsroom, we were talking about this today. We were all like, what is the solution for our kids?
Parents are stepping in because they just don't want this. So are we at maybe a turning point, or I don't know? What do you think? We've just got about 30 seconds here.
Yeah, I can tell you that it's a massive theme that we're following on our sort of social media pod here at Bloomberg.
Yeah.
Because it's not just this trial in LA. We mentioned the thousands of others. There's state AGs that are suing, school districts that are suing. This is not a storyline that's going to go away. And I think the ban or the restrictions, in Australia and potentially in Europe are just adding to that. So certainly can't remember a time when it's been talked about this much before.